Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We will proceed with Chapter 2, Business Process Redesign Principles, Lighting the Way. So the objectives of this chapter, at the end of this chapter, you will be able to list and describe the 7 process principles for redesign, list and explain the 7 transformation principles to guide managers in their project strategy, structure and process, and identify and describe the 6 principles that provide guidance for continued productivity and success, which is continuous process improvement. There will be 3 principles that we'll look at. Okay, first is process redesign principles, second is transformation principles, and the last one is continuous process improvement principles. What does it mean by lighting the way? The principles. Why do we need these principles? All right. Actually, principles is to guide the organization, to guide the business process itself. Okay. Do we need any standards? Any standards in the organization related to business process reengineering? Any guidelines and principles that we can refer to for us to design the principles, design the re-engineering, any guidelines and principles for transformation during the transformation process, any standards, any guidelines, principles for continuous process improvement. All right, so most of the time, these standards, these guidelines and principles are used by the team members, to design, all right, to design the process, the structure, the technical processes, all right, for them to design the different managerial compensation and performance measurement systems, for them to focus their transformation efforts on business culture, the values and belief systems. If you still remember the 3 layers that we have learned earlier, with 9 dimensions. All right. Some there may be need this principle, this standard, the guidelines for coming out with new techniques, all right, or advanced computer technologies, for the business change, for the radical change, right? So for re-engineering change to be successful, 3 questions must be answered. How do we develop effective re-engineering designs? So this refers to the process redesign principles, the 7 process redesign principles. Second question, how can we ensure a successful implementation? This is referring to the 7 transformation principles. So how do we ensure the successful implementation? So there are a few things that we need to look at. And then the third question is, how can we ensure continued application, productivity and effectiveness after the re-engineering? So this one is referring to the 6 continuous process improvement principles. So these questions can be answered through 3 sets of interlocking principles. These 3 principles just now. So next, we'll take a look at each of these principles in detail. What are the 7 process redesign principles? What are the 7 transformation principles? And what are the 6 continuous process improvement principles? Turning to the second principles of business process reengineering, that is transformation principles. So previously we talked about the process redesign principles, which is the stage of redesigning, planning the changes they want to make. And then now, transformation principles is about the changing of the current practice that we have in the organization. So re-engineering a business operation means changing its culture. Okay, we must begin to act and think in new, perhaps uncomfortable ways. So we will change the way we do work. Okay? The existing work process that we have will be conducted in entirely new ways of working. However, the implementation of these changes, the transformation will be much harder than the designing phase of the changes. And this is because the resistance will be the highest during this implementation stage, when people begin to face what the change means for them at a very personal level. That's why we need these 7 transformation principles to guide us, to guide the managers, to guide the executives, to guide the project manager, to guide the project team members in implementing the project strategy, the structure and process. There are 7 transformation principles that are: first, assumptions and biases shape behavior. Second, people believe what you do, not what you say. Third, involvement breeds acceptance. Fourth, just don't do something, sit there. Fifth, change the foundation first. Sixth, change takes time, but not that much. 7, progress is not linear, nor is it smooth. I would like to start by looking at the first transformation principle, which is assumptions and biases shape behavior. Okay, so these are the biases, the beliefs, the assumptions that determine an individual's mental model and in turn his or her behavior. Okay, so at the very least, we must acknowledge the power of these mental models before transformation begin, because these biases, these assumptions will affect the transformation that we want to implement. So once you are aware of any biases, any assumptions in the organization, you may start by learning about the group that have these biases, these assumptions. Make an effort to engage with these members, with the members of that group, spend time with them and genuinely get to know them. But remember, you need to experience these people as individuals, not as the representatives of a group. Then you may try to overcome the biases by paying attention to what they are thinking. All right, take another further step, by asking them why they are having this kind of thought and this kind of assumption. So this might help the organization, the project leader, the management to tackle the assumptions and biases of the employees in the organization. Because behavior cannot change until the underlying causes of the behavior are addressed. So this is very important. Re-engineering must be changed. Re-engineering must change the way people think as much as it changes the way the business operates. Turning to the second principle, that is, people believe what you do, not what you say, meaning people may doubt what you say, but they will believe what you do, what you show to them. Okay, so the executive sponsors and the project team members must demonstrate the behaviors. They must show the behaviors. They must display the behaviors that will be valued in the re-engineered environment. For example, the teamwork and empowerment. If, let's say, okay, you are given the employees, the team members, the empowerment, you empowered them with decision making. So let them do the decision making. Let go of the decision making, because they have been empowered to do the decision making. All right, and then you need to display the enthusiasm and commitment towards the change till the the completion of the project itself, completion of the re-engineering. All right, so team members must be willing to speak the truth, challenge deceit, and act with integrity. So this is very important. All right, moving on to the third principle: involvement breeds acceptance. It is an old principle of selling. People must own before they buy. Okay, we need that experience before we buy something. We need to feel the changes. We need to know what is going on so that we will accept the changes. Right? People won't accept re-engineering until they can see themselves living and working in the re-engineered environment. So you need to involve those most affected by the change in re-engineering design and implementation. Give the employees, the members, what they value most. Okay? Give them a chance to have a real impact. Give them as much responsibility as they can handle. All right, the action that they can do during those changes, after the changes made. All right, so it delivers better, more easily implemented solution. It also minimizes resistance to change. Okay, so it is just like an empowerment to the employees, empowerment to the members of the project. So we involve them in the project. Next principle is just don't do something, sit there. It means that the project team ran straight into a brick wall. Okay, they do the action, they do the changes, okay, without thinking first, that cost several people their jobs. These are the typical mistake made by project teams and executives who act before they think. Right? So among the mistake, they're not thinking through the assumptions, through the biases. They're not planning for every contingency, and they are using coercion rather than eliciting buy-in. So this creates project delays and unnecessary pressures to the project management, to the re-engineering project. Right? So actually, we need to bring people from all affected departments to help us to think through the implementation before the team acts. Now, I will talk about the fifth principle, which is change the foundation first. The first phase in implementation is to create a foundation that is a common knowledge base and view of the problem and its solution. You would never build a house without clearing the ground and laying a foundation, right? Implementing an organizational change without ensuring there is a solid foundation first is like trying to build a house from the second story down. So to have the best chance for success with the changes, you need to start with a solid foundation. You may ask questions, which should be the first processes to change once implementation begins, or should they be those that are easiest to change? Or you may ask, should they be those that will provide the biggest benefit? Okay, so the decision is not an easy one. Many changes are interdependent, and the biggest improvements often require the biggest investment. Okay, so this foundation is the best achieved through introducing a common language and a set of business practices to support the language. The second last principle is change takes time, but not that much. What does it mean? It is the time is all it takes, right? So transformation is a process, not a single event. So you need to understand that no matter how urgent the situation is, okay, the change doesn't happen overnight. Systems must be built, processes overhauled, reference materials developed, and people trained. It is important to ensure that the key steps in any change are still taken. For example, gaining support from top executives. We need to communicate the importance of the changes, educate those who will be affected by the changes. What else? Provide support, measuring results, and so on and so forth. Right? So indeed, many of those actions will need to be continued even after the change has been implemented. That is to ensure that the effort achieves its goals and that people don't fall back into old ways of behaving. So what do you think? How long should a change management effort last? 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, 2 years, or many, many years? Right, so from the beginning of the re-engineering project, change should occur every 6 to 9 months, but there's no hard and fast answer to that question. So that is on the very basic basis. Right, there is one rule of thumb to keep in mind. It will probably take a lot longer than you initially think. But not that much. Finally, the seventh transformation principle is progress is not linear, nor is it smooth. A linear approach to transforming an organization is one in which each change follows logically upon its predecessor, the task before, and each module of change is orderly and functions independently of other changes. Unfortunately, re-engineering in an operating environment is a very disorderly process. You may need to reverse, moving backwards, or move forwards, depending on the situations. Let's take a look at these lines. The first line is what people think it looks like. And this second line is what it really looks like. So it is haywire. Right? So start the task today, be consistent and make progress.